Like, that's kind of the whole point of relationship anarchy is that we recognize and we allow for and we make space for that we have different feelings for different people. We have different wants and needs towards different people, and that's okay. Welcome to All the Love, the podcast where we deep dive into all things queer and non-monogamous relationships.
We're Ian Rowe, longtime practitioners in coaching, therapy, and education, with a focus on supporting humans in said relationships.
Every quarter, we pick a theme and host a series of live podcast recordings.
And here's one we made earlier.
Hope that it speaks to you. All the love. From E, that's me.
And Rowe, that's me. Okay, cute.
All right. Ro, do you want to say a little bit about you? And then I'll say a little bit about me, and then we'll dive into our topic today.
Yeah, I mean, you may or may not know me because you might have come to this through my work or Elizabeth's work, but I am Ro Moed. I am a coach specializing in working with polyamorous people and relationship anarchist people. I also am a trainee therapist in advanced training. The kind of therapy that I practice is called transactional analysis. That may become relevant today. I might mention it because I am a little bit obsessed. And, you know, just a little bit of a personal introduction. The way that I practice relationships is I am a relationship anarchist. I'm also at the moment identifying with the label of solo polyamorous. Yeah. Is there anything else you think I should have said, Elizabeth, that I haven't? Pressure on you.
I know. We have heard each other's intros so many different times. No, I just think that you're wonderful and brilliant. So I'll just add my testimonial and recommendation.
Thank you.
I'm sure the people on this call can attest to anyways. So
thank you. I just think whenever I go first and do my bio and then you do yours, I'm like, God, that sounds so fucking professional. So yeah, over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, hello. My name is Elizabeth Cunningham, and on the professional side of things, I've been working in the field of gender, sexuality, and relationships since 2008. I have a few degrees in this area and also worked at a domestic violence center where I helped people understand unhealthy and abusive relationships and how to navigate and get out of those dynamics. I determined that I wanted to switch course to help people get into healthy relationships and work my former colleagues out of a job. And that is when I found transformational life coaching. So that is the modality that I use. I'm a certified transformational life coach. Basically, I help people move from wherever they are in their life right now to wherever they need to be and move past, work through whatever barriers that there are to getting to that ideal place or future or person that they want to be. I've been specializing in polyamorous and queer relationships. I also identify as polyamorous and queer. More specifically, I identify as a lesbian. And I have been practicing polyamory since 2010. Relationship anarchy is something that marries two of my favorite topics, which is political theory and relational theory. And then being able to bring that inside of a practical lens is also my nerddom as well, which is something that life coaching helps you do. Because what's the good of nerddom if you can't actually do something with it, in my opinion? Now I feel like I should ask you, Ro, did I miss anything? Anything else?
No, as always, you're incredibly thorough and impressive, so no worries.
And I also train coaches now. So I train polyamorous and queer life coaches. So if you want to get certified, come talk to me as well. Okay, that's it. That's it. We'll stop there. We're very impressive. Everyone's impressed. All right, let's go.
I'm so impressive. I forgot to connect my actual microphone, which I've now done. So hopefully everyone can hear me a little bit better.
Oh, man. Okay, Ro, do you want to share a little bit more about our topic?
Yes. Okay, so we are going to be doing 9 episodes as part of this series. And the reason why we're doing 9 episodes is because there are 9 fundamental principles to the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto that was written by Andie Nordgren. it recently came to my attention that someone wrote a kind of 2.0 version of that not so long ago. I forget the full name, but I know her first name was Maria. She actually reached out to me directly to say, hey, I wrote this thing. Did you know? And I said, I did not know. So that's cool. But what we're focusing on in this series is the original manifesto. I still think it has a lot of value, a lot of really useful stuff in it. And we're going to go through each principle one by one, each episode covering one principle in depth and exploring what it brings up for us, the questions that it might raise, the struggles that we see people having with it, things like that. So, the first principle of the Relationship Anarchist Manifesto, here we go. Love is abundant and every relationship is unique. Relationship anarchy questions the idea that love is a limited resource that can only be real if restricted to a couple. You have capacity to love more than one person, and one relationship and the love felt for that person does not diminish love felt for another. Don't rank and compare people and relationships. Cherish the individual and your connection to them. One person in your life does not need to be named primary for the relationship to be real. Each relationship is independent and a relationship between autonomous individuals. Let that sink in. So, what are your opening thoughts on this principle, Elizabeth? Did you want to go through it item by item, studying each line of it like it's a verse in the Bible, or do you want to jump around, as we probably will end up jumping around?
We'll probably end up jumping around, although I'm not averse to going line by line, word by word. That's the level of nerddom I have inside of this. But I think for me, the thing that is most important to talk about first is what we mean in this context when we're using the word love. Because love can mean so many different things in so many different contexts. And so I think understanding what we mean by love inside of relationship anarchy. And for me, when the word love is used in a relationship anarchy context, I think it is more in reference to like connection and the connection that we have with people and the relationships specifically that we have with people. Because I know in other contexts, love can mean romance, love can be talking about sex, and it's more specific to like romantic and sexual relationships, where I think in the relationship anarchy context, it really is more like the connections that we have in our life, including romantic and sexual connections, but not limited to romantic and sexual connections. And so, yeah, your love does not need to be named primary for the relationship to be real. And I think that that is alluding to when we think about romantic and sexual relationships, we think about exclusivity, right? So anyway, point being that love in this context is connection and relationships more broadly.
I think a lot of people hear relationship anarchy, and of course they misunderstand anarchy, and we can get into that another time, but they also misunderstand relationship. Like, it's not just about romantic relationships. When we say relationship, some people do think romantic sexual connection.
Right.
But really, relationship anarchy, I see as a philosophy for how we approach all of our connections. It's relevant to any human or not even human connection that we might have. I approach my relationship to my cat with a relationship anarchist perspective. You know, I treat her as equally valuable and worth honoring and taking care of as my partners, as myself, as my family, as my friends, as you, as the people that I work with. And of course, our relationships are all going to differ, but the love is always there. And for me, love is that positive regard, that wanting good things for other people, wanting people to be the fullest expression of themselves, to be well. And it really extends beyond even the relationships I have to just all life in the world. And I know that might sound a bit woo to some people, but that really feels true for me, that I do wish well on everyone, I love everyone. I love the earth and I love all people and all animals on it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to give each and every person in the world the same amount of time or the same kind of energy, but that love is still there. So that love is abundant. For me, that's what that's about, that we can feel love for literally every living thing and in different ways. But fundamentally, that love is just that positive regard and that kind goodwill towards others, in my view.
I agree with you. And yeah, some people can think that that's wooey. I don't think that that's wooey. I'm like, yeah, no, that feels very real to me.
Mhm. Well, I
That's
was hearing today someone say, I don't know how much I think this is true. I'm just sharing something that I heard, that there can be a bit of a split between different neurotypes and how people think about treating others. And like some people have more of a tendency towards being tribal. And if you're in my inner circle, then I love and care about you. And other people have this more like integrity with how they behave across the board. And I feel like I'm very much in that second camp, and I always have been. It's never made sense to me that I'm loving towards the people close to me and not towards the people who aren't. But anyway,
yeah.
let's not get too distracted, but I just
Yeah.
relevant.
Well, no, but I do agree with you. And I would hypothesize that the Venn diagram between that type of neurotype and people who align with relationship anarchy is probably a little bit more of a circle.
Okay. So yeah, the Venn diagram of kinky, neurodivergent, poly, relationship anarchist, board game enthusiast, kind of a circle. Can we dig into the idea of abundance a little bit? Because
Absolutely.
I think that this is a contentious issue sometimes for people. The phrase that I commonly hear being said is love, it may be abundant, but time and energy are not. And I'm like, yeah, well, of course, like time is finite. We know that. But the love is abundant thing doesn't mean that you have endless time to give to build loads of relationships up to the same kind of level of commitment and involvement. I think the feeling that love is scarce is really common in society. So I think it is useful to lean into this more abundance mindset, because I think we hear things like, you can't love two people at once, or if you really loved me, then I would be enough and you wouldn't want to love anybody else. And that is so rife in our society. It's just like such an ingrained belief that love is pie and it's finite. And if you give two slices to one person, then those two slices cannot be given to someone
Yeah.
else. I think we need to really challenge that if we're going to act from a relationship anarchist mindset and remind ourselves that love doesn't need to be protected and prioritized and channeled into one relationship in order to be meaningful or real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to pinpoint the word mindset as well. If we allow ourselves to have the practice of having a mindset of abundance, and again, specifically inside of the context of love, then I think what that might look like is coming from and assuming that in our day to day or in our relationships, like coming from the assumption that there is enough love here. Even in non-monogamous, polyamorous relationships, there's still the tendency to do what you were sharing, right? Like, if you loved me, then, right? If you loved me, then you would do this. If you cared about me, then you would make more time. If you da 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 da. And especially inside of the time thing as well. And that's something that you mentioned. And so when we're having these conversations that can be very tricky to navigate, like I don't want to diminish people's experiences inside of this, but when we're having these conversations, what if we came from the point of view of, well, love is abundant here. Like, I do love you, right? Can we agree first and foremost that the love that I have for you isn't the issue, right? Can we agree to that? That love is abundant here. I love you enormously. And something is happening that is making you feel that it's diminished, like I'm not giving you enough time. But can we agree that I love you enormously and that there's something that's not workable here? And so when I hear the term love is abundant and I think about it in a more like practical sense, that's something that comes to mind for me. Can we make the assumption in our day-to-day, in our conversations, in our relationships, that love is actually abundant? Can we allow ourselves to receive that too? Because it's not just about giving love, because I think that we have an enormous capacity to give love, but I think where people struggle most is receiving love, myself included. I am very human. I'm extremely human. And like being able to receive that abundance of love, I think is part of the conversation and practicality and workability of it as well.
Yeah, none of this is psychologically easy. We're talking about these principles as if like, yeah, of course, love is abundant. Cool. Let's move on then.
Obviously.
Okay, there's lots of love.
Like, okay, world peace, done, check. Why is no one calling us?
Yeah. But I think, I also hold my hands up, extremely human. And I think we all come with complex histories that make us, have filters on experiences we have. And so we might, in one part of us, truly believe love is abundant, and then another part of us is extremely fearful that we ourselves are not lovable, or this other person's not safe, or whatever it is. We all have different beliefs that we might have developed for a reason, because of our past experiences. So none of this is to say it's easy to implement, but yeah, from a kind of theoretical principle perspective, that's a mindset, like you were saying, that we need to be working to cultivate. And I presume when we get to the episode where we cover the principle trust is better, that we'll dig more deeply into not testing people to prove love. So
I am so excited for that episode. I'm excited for all of the episodes, but the trust is better one I am most excited about. Also, it's on my birthday, so.
Oh my gosh, okay, we can celebrate. I'm just like thinking, let me see. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask here and not doing it very well.
You're fine.
Yeah, so I think another thing that was brought to my attention in the last few days was, and I haven't really done my due diligence and checked this out, so I'm saying something that someone said to me and I don't actually know like the details of it, but somebody commented on a post that I put out that actually the author of the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto, Andie Nordgren, kind of retracted the phrasing love is abundant because they could see how believing that love is abundant can lead, apparently, to treating people as if they're disposable. That was what this commenter said. And so just, yeah, it's a strange one. I think for me, like that point still stands. And I think you can have an abundance mindset and still behave responsibly. Just because love is abundant and there is the possibility of loving many people in many different ways all at the same time in a sustainable way, that doesn't mean that, oh, okay, well, there's love over there, I'm going to go get it. Like that's not what love is abundant means to me. It means that there is enough to go around as opposed to there is always more to go and get. So why would I stay here?
Yeah, well, it occurs to me like let's compare it to like food. Food is abundant. Like there is an abundance of food on this planet, such that no one should be going hungry. But anyways, I digress. But there is an abundance of food on the planet. That doesn't mean that as a human being, you are going to now go out and eat all of that food because you don't need it. You only need enough food to sustain yourself and your body, right? And so food is abundant. And also, love is abundant, but that does not mean, and I think that this is, the point that you were making, is that does not mean that you need to go out and consume all of that love or gather or whatever the correct verbiage is here. But you can, and it is possible to be satiated in love, and that you can have the connections and relationships and affinity and whatever is healthy and sustainable for you. Because just like food, we do need human connection in order to survive. It is a survival. And so what do we need in order to survive? And maybe survival brings up different connotations that I'm not necessarily trying to invoke. But the point being is that there is an amount of love that you can physically or emotionally obtain in your life to where you can be like, wow, I really feel satiated. I really feel happy about the amount of love and connection and the level of relation that I have in my life. Isn't that wonderful and amazing? And just like with food, I'm going to roll with this analogy. You need to continue to cultivate it, right? Like love is abundant doesn't mean like you reach a certain point and then like you're good. Like you still need to cultivate relationships. You still might want to go and meet new people, like all of that. But I think it is our opportunity as relational humans to also discover what that is for ourselves. And so again, inside of this like love is abundant mindset, it's more of like possibility where it's possible to be satiated with the relationships and the love that we have in our life. What we need and what we might be asking for is possible for us to get, for us to receive. Right.
I love the analogy
Mhm.
of food. I'm so into gardening at the moment. My whole Instagram feed on my personal Instagram is just gardening, gardening, gardening. I'm trying to learn about it. And yeah, like if you put too many plants in one pot, then all of them will die, But you do need to take care of those plants in order to reap rewards from it. And I love that distinction between love versus relationships. Like love is abundant and relationships still require care and negotiation and maintenance. And, we may feel satiated at some point in our lives, but we change, our relationships change, and always having that opportunity there to go out and seek different kinds of love that might nourish us at different points in our lives. I think that's the beauty of relationship anarchy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Was there something else you wanted to say? I feel like
Not on that topic. I was gonna like shift to a different one if you
Okay,
want.
shift. Let's shift. What's the
Okay.
next?
Because I'm like, shit, we got 23 minutes. So
I know.
there's so much to
I was
say.
thinking the same thing too.
So the next point I was thinking is to hone in on the every relationship is unique part. And what I have as a sort of opening thoughts on this, I'm curious to hear what you have to say, of course, is that if each relationship is its own ecosystem, then comparison stops being useful. I think that's the learning that I take from that. That if each relationship is unique, we don't need to compare one to another. So instead of asking questions like the ones we're taught to ask on the whole in our societies, is, like things like who matters more? Who's the real partner? Who's your best friend? Trying to rank people in that way. The question is that's more useful is, what is this relationship? What is it? And what do we want it to be? And is it working for both of us? Is it nourishing us? What needs to change? What needs to stay? Not relative to another relationship, but just this one. Is this garden well? We're going to be coming back to that analogy a lot, I feel. And I think that shift really helps take people out of the hierarchical thinking into something more about building with intention, not trying to rank and feel secure through feeling primary, but just feeling secure through the quality of the connection that you're building.
Yeah. I think that you said that really well. Just hitting on the bullet point of like letting go of comparison and trying to keep myself on track because there's like three things that I want to say here. Okay.
Say three things. It's okay.
Yeah. But I want to make sure that it's like as relevant as possible. Obviously, as people who are non-monogamous, polyamorous, like we run into the societal shoulds all the time, right? Like you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this, why are you doing this, blah, 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 blah. But I have found this principle, like specifically honoring each individual connection. And then when you are sharing about your relationships, allowing it to be about that. Like when you're sharing about your relationships with other people who like might not understand it. I find that this is really useful as well because it's like, no, I just have my relationship with this person. And this is why it matters to me. And this is why it's really beautiful. And this is what I love about them, without ever having to name like, oh, they're my girlfriend or, whatever. Just being able to like share about the uniqueness of that relationship and then having that be okay. And I have found in my personal experience and also in the experience of people that I've worked with as well, is that that's really enough for people. Like maybe it doesn't have people reach a level of understanding that would be nice to have, but inside of just conversation with people, that it is really useful for that. And also inside of the relationship itself, being able to have it be okay that there is it, without being like, we don't need a label, because I think that you have to be careful with that as well. Careful with people's intentionality beyond like not wanting to label something, which is, I think, where we get into like a conversation about where relationship hierarchy can get misused as well. So it is a balance, especially as a newer way of being inside of our current cultural understanding of relationships. But being able to have conversations with the person that you are in relationship with and being like, no, this is just how we feel about each other. This is what we love about each other. This is what we like doing together. This is what we like sharing together. Outside of labels, how can you form the concreteness of your relationship? And I also think that that requires a level of creativity too. And, not to poo-poo labels, because I know that some people really love them, but like when you take away labels, then it's like, yeah, what does make our relationship concrete? And I think inside of that inquiry, it can also have the relationship feel more concrete as well, right? Like it's not just like we put a label on it and so therefore it is, but rather it's more created. Like, no, this is what we like, this is how we feel, this is what we see, this is how we connect, this is what we love about each other. Like, it's so much more rich when we don't have the, maybe this isn't the best way to say it, but like when we don't have like the training wheels of labels to like hold that together.
Yeah, because a lot of assumptions are made about what each label means, is what I'm understanding by what you're saying there, that if you say someone is my partner, then it's assumed you have a very specific type of relationship, that if you're partners, then you're romantically and sexually involved, and you're working towards living together and you're working towards marriage and you would like to probably have children. There's all these assumptions about what it means to be a partner. And you run the risk of oversimplifying your relationship or not digging into the depths of what you actually want to experience with someone else if you assume those things, rather than explicitly saying, hey, what do you actually want? Do you want these things? Do you want other things in our relationship? Do you want to be friends who have a sexual connection? We're not partners, but we're friends. Like, what does that label mean for us? And I think it's really interesting how, yeah, what you were saying about explaining the kind of relationship you have. And I find if you just explain to people like it's no big deal that, this person just matters to me, and, and what, yeah, I don't want to marry them, but I don't want to marry anyone. So like, what's your problem? Then people tend to go along with it. Because I have, partners where our relationships are very different in some ways. In many ways, a lot of the same things are there: the respect, the kindness, the intelligence, the humor, like all the qualities that I look for in human beings are there. But the specific nature of our relationships is very different. The amount of time we spend together, the ways in which we spend time together is different. And one of them, probably from the outside, looks a lot more like a partnership that you'd expect in a traditional relationship. And the other one, people might say, yeah, you've been together for 6 years, but like, not really, you're not really partners. And I would really push against that, because that is a very solid, healthy, supportive partnership. And just because it doesn't have some of the traditional markers of partnership does not mean that it's not real for me, or that that relationship is less than the other. There really is no hierarchy. And I just value those two romantic connections in different ways for different things. But they are both valuable, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that ties into the, one person in your life does not need to be named primary for the relationship to be real, right?
Yes.
And
Which can be quite provocative, I think, as a concept for people, but go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I'm just listening to you and I'm thinking about, the relationships in my own life. And like my longest relationship is 11 years, right? No, 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 no. That's a total lie. 9 years, 8 years. Who knows? Anyways,
Long time.
so a long time is me and Alec, which is, and I have Alec's permission to share his name and our relationship. We've had this discussion many, many, many times about me making content, but Alec and I, and which is also confusing because I'm a lesbian and one of my life partners is a man, but that's because we were partners before I came out as a lesbian. So that's also very confusing for people. But I think one of the things around this concept of like each relationship is unique and like taking away the shoulds and talking about what works and what doesn't work is that it is a constant and fluid conversation, that it can change and move and grow in ways that you wouldn't expect over time, and that it can grow and evolve in ways that you don't expect because you're not operating from a cultural or societal expectation. When Alec and I first got together, we were both engaged. And at first we had a kink relationship and then we were friends and then we like tried to date, but like, obviously me dating men did not work out. And then when I came out as a lesbian, we had a conversation about, and we'd had a conversation about it before because we were joking about how I was getting queerer and queerer and queerer until I was just going to become a lesbian. And then that happened. So the day that I called him and I was just like, so, and he was just like, yeah, okay, well, I love you no matter what. Do you still love me? And I was like, of course I love you. You're like my favorite person in the entire world. Like I can't imagine not doing life with you. And he was like, okay. And then he was like, well, like, so I guess we're just like life partners and we'll just kind of figure it out like we always do. And I was just like, yeah, exactly.
That's so sweet. Alec
Yeah.
sounds like the best from everything that you've shared about him.
Yeah.
It reminds me, actually, I had one of my partners recently said to me something very relationship anarchist, which was quite similar to what you're sharing. He said, if you came out as a lesbian, which is it's just not going to happen. I was going to say, unfortunately, I don't want to be one of those like people who says, unfortunately, be about being attracted to men. It's just, it's like in the cultural zeitgeist. But I am definitely not a lesbian, but it was a very hypothetical situation. He was saying, if you did come out as a lesbian, that wouldn't eradicate everything else that we have in our relationship that's valuable. And I was listening to you talk and thinking there are probably people who would challenge you and say like, well, then you haven't really been together for 8 or 9 or 11 years or whatever it is. You haven't really been together because like you're not having sex and attracted to each other. And it's like, I'm sorry, how many people are married for 40 plus years and not having sex and we still think their relationship is like valuable and real? So yeah, you have been connecting with Alec for that amount of time. He has been in your life and been important to you for that amount of time, and the relationship changing doesn't change that, doesn't eradicate that.
Yeah, exactly. And I could give other examples as well, but I think it just speaks to like when I think of unique, I also think of like fluidity and like the ability to change and the ability to discover like what really works and to be able to have those conversations. And I think that also goes back to the concept of love is abundant and the assumption that love is present, right? Like Alec and I could use other people in my life as an example too, but Alec really has given me like permanent permission to just share about our relationship for the purposes of content creation. But like Alec and I, like there is no doubt about the love that Alec and I have for one another. And so it's not even a question. And do we have insecurities in our relationship? Of course, we're human, it's not perfect. But there's not a question of we love each other, we're in this together, we're here for each other, however that looks, we're gonna figure it out and it's gonna be beautiful because that's just what it is. And so having that ability and that practice of the assumption that love is here, love is present, right? Like, and that assuredness, I think, is also inside of this concept of love is abundant for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We probably will dig into that more in future episodes because there is going to be a principle about the ebb and flow of relationships as well and allowing them to change. So I have also like further examples, but I'll hold on to those for now.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for reining me in because I do tend to skip around these bullet points. And so I appreciate you.
It's fine. There's crossover. So like it's really hard to not touch on some of these points. Yeah, there's no criticism under that comment. But coming back to the idea of primary for a second and not needing a relationship to be named primary for a relationship to be real, I think that is quite a contentious one for people because we are so primed by our societies to think that we do need to have someone who is primary, someone that we invest the most in, and that's what makes the relationship valid and meaningful. And I think we do need to acknowledge, because again, the pushback I get from this is like, but not every relationship is going to look the same. I'm like, that's not what not naming someone primary means for me. I acknowledge that people have practical entanglements with each other. I acknowledge that people have commitments that shape the priority in their life, the way that they distribute priority in their relationships. That's not hierarchy, in my view. I distinguish hierarchy from prioritization or time spent. And each relationship's going to look different. Like I have, as I was saying before, one partner who I could easily spend 3 hours a night on the phone with. Obviously, I don't have enough time to do that, but I could do that. And several times a week, we'll have long phone calls. Probably won't see each other in person that often because that's not feasible or really necessary for our relationship. And another partner where I called him once and he was like, is everything okay? Because we never speak on the phone. He was really surprised and assumed something was wrong. But we'll text every day and we'll definitely try and see each other more often. So that doesn't mean that one of them is more important to me or more primary because I spend more time with them in one way than the other. And then like separate from those relationships, thinking about friendships, because like we said, relationship anarchy is not just about romance. I have friendships that I invest more time and energy in. I think it's uncomfortable to admit, but I think we all have friends who, if we get a text from them, we're more likely to answer the same day, and others where we're like, it'll be okay, we can wait, or that person's not going to be bothered if you wait. That's not the norm in your relationship. I think having those kinds of norms in your relationships, those kinds of rhythms and commitments, doesn't mean that any of those relationships is less legitimate or less true, less real, or less meaningful. It's just that some people will have more centrality in our lives, but that isn't hierarchy. Hierarchy for me is really about power imbalance. So if I had one friend who, no matter what, I always put first, even if someone else is hanging off the edge of a cliff, that is hierarchy because I'm giving so much power to one person and it has nothing to do with their actual need in that moment. But tending to answer a friend more quickly than another, that's not necessarily hierarchy. That's just having a different kind of relationship. Does that make sense?
I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. And yeah, I think that hierarchy, I completely agree with you. And relationship anarchy comes from political science, political theory, And anarchy is about not having a hierarchy of authority. And so hierarchy is about power and authority. It's not about like the amount of time spent with someone. And I think that that pairs really well with the uniqueness of relationships, right? Like one person is not a primary, and also simultaneously, relationships are unique. And I don't want to repeat back everything that you just said, but I completely agree with you because we have relationships where you still have love and affinity in that relationship in the way that you do. And then you have an appropriate relationship to what works best for both of you. And as you so eloquently put, like sometimes for some people that means like you talk every once in a while. For some people, that means you talk every day. And we're also using the example of physically connecting, like whether that be via technology or like in person, but that can also be the quality of time that you have, right? And also, as you mentioned, the needs of a person too. Everyone has different needs, and people's needs are changing over time. Like there are times that, I'll bring up Alec again. There are times where like Alec and I sometimes don't even talk for a whole month because we've just got other stuff going on and like other commitments. And then there's sometimes where it's like, hey, I really need you right now. I'm having a really hard time. And then there's other times where it's just like we just happen to hang out like a lot of the time just because it's how our worlds are colliding. And so it looks different all the time. And it doesn't mean that, when we're not talking, that other relationships are taking precedent over that relationship. It just means that that's just not what our relationship looks like right now. And that's okay. And so I think partly and when I say our, I mean the non-monogamous, polyamorous community, and more specifically the online community, because I think people like when we have like in real life conversations, this is less of a point of contention than it is online. Like our tension around this concept of hierarchy and non-hierarchy is to the point of being self-defeating. Because when we're so worried about if we're doing this, it's like keeping up with the Joneses almost, of just like, are you doing it correctly? Are you being a bad non-monogamist or bad polyamorous by practicing hierarchy versus non-hierarchy? And it becomes this, like, it becomes less about how you are actually considering the workability of your relationships versus how your relationships look on the outside to the community. And so then we put an overemphasis on doing it right or making sure that we're not slipping up or making sure that we're not seen as someone who's like trying to exert power and control over our partners. When I think the more healthy and practical and useful conversation to have is, what is the workability of your relationships, and are you honoring that with your own integrity, and are you in communication with your partners, and is it working for everyone? Right? Which I think is a more useful way to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. The word can get so messy and confusing. And I also want to be clear that just because I am a relationship anarchist, with anarchy meaning no sacred ruler and hierarchy meaning there is a sacred ruler, like etymologically, that's what it means, that there is someone who has more power and is treated with more dignity and consideration. Just because like I am more anarchist in my thinking doesn't mean that I think it's necessarily wrong to do relationships differently, as long as you're communicating very clearly the boundaries of the connections that you can have. You can be polyamorous and absolutely hierarchical and do that, I think, in an ethical way, as long as you're being honest with people and people are fully consenting to what they're getting involved in. And you can be a monogamous person who is relationship anarchist because you may choose to have one relationship that's sexual and romantic, but you treat other connections as equally valid and valuable. And that's a non-hierarchical approach. So there are various ways and combinations that different ways that this thing can go. And I don't necessarily think one is more moral than the other. It's just a kind of preference and inclination and choice,
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully
My
said.
feeling, oh, thank you. My feeling is that I have more things I could say on this topic, but since we have 8 more episodes, I'm sure that other things will come up as we go along, and maybe people's questions might prompt things that we haven't said yet. So I'm happy to move to Q&A if you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. And we could talk, I mean, we have talked about it for years. We'll continue to talk about it for years. Not everything has been covered, and that is okay. And yeah, I would love to move to Q&A. So, hello. Hello,
Give us
audience
your
of
cues,
what
and
are
we'll
your
give you the name.
cues? And yeah, so you can, if you would like to unmute yourself, you can share verbally, or if you want to write in the chat, you can also do that. But we would love to hear any questions that you have, or any comments, or any thoughts that came up for you while we were sharing. And you don't have to wait for us to call on you. You can just jump right in if you want to.
Hi, are y'all able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, I'm Brianna. Nice to meet y'all. Thank you so much for the talk. Sorry I
Yeah.
was late. I know I just jumped in, but really great points near the end. I wanted to ask, are there certain things you look for when you're looking for folks that are consenting to having power dynamics or hierarchy? And I asked that because I know when I was a new baby in polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, I thought I was consenting, right? And then I got into the experiences and didn't feel well, but I wasn't ready to let go of that relationship. So I was definitely like abandoning myself, just bending over backwards, doing things that I don't know, but it's hard because my partner kept checking in and being like, okay, is this okay with you? It's not okay with you. But I wasn't being fully honest. But I wonder, as someone now who's maybe on the other side of things, if I was to date someone who maybe isn't into a relationship anarchy, or it's like, how do we get those indications that someone is not fully on board, even if they say they are? And is there a responsibility on our end when it comes to kind of understanding if there's fully consent there, even if they're saying they're okay with everything?
What a great question. And I don't know if you saw, but you got a person who did the clap emoji as well. Ro, do you have any strong preference to go first?
No, you go ahead since you're speaking already. I won't interrupt.
Okay. My first thoughts are, so what I'm hearing inside of your question is, number one, how can you ask a question responsibly and have a conversation in a way that allows for space for people to share what they might be afraid to share? And then the second part of the question is, and what is my responsibility inside of that? Right? Cool. So, one thing that you can do in asking questions or having a conversation when it's allowing for that safe space for people to share that is in asking the question, like, hey, like, are you okay with this? Like, how do you feel about this? And then they answer, you can also state your intention as well. Like, if they're like, no, it's fine, like, I'm totally cool, like, we're all good, blah, 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 blah. And then you could follow that up with, okay, I'm glad to hear you say that. And the reason that I'm bringing it up is because I have historically had a hard time saying this in the past. And I have said yes to things and agreed to things and gone along with things just because I didn't know how to say no or didn't have the language for it. And so I want to give you the space and opportunity because I would hate for you to have that experience, right? Like you can actually just intentionally call out what might be happening, and you're calling it out in a way that's not like, are you being honest with me? You're pointing to you. You're like, hey, I had this experience and I want to make sure that you're not having this experience. Pointing it out directly does open up the space. It doesn't guarantee that they will be 100% honest with you, but I have seen that be very effective in people being more honest and also having that safety. And what might happen in that scenario, if they don't say it right then, maybe they'll say it later. Maybe they'll be like, hey, thank you so much for bringing up that conversation earlier. I've kind of been reflecting on it, and maybe there is parts of me that aren't as on board as I would like to be, because I would like to be on board with this, right? So also having the expectation that this might be a multiple conversation thing and that it won't get resolved in just one mentioning of it. The other thing that comes up for me inside of that is if you see it as a pattern with someone, that you can gently call out that pattern too and just say, hey, I just want to check in with you. I just want to be doubly sure, because we did have a time like a month ago where you said you were cool with stuff, and then it kind of turned out that you weren't. And so I'm not trying to I've done that before. So I'm not mad at you, but I do want to make sure that you feel good about this, because I'm totally okay with you not feeling good about this. Right. So that does multiple things. That does just again, very gently calling out the pattern that you see in as loving and compassionate a way as possible. And B, also making it okay, making sure that they know that you're okay with them not being okay. Because one of the things that people get really tied up with is well, if I say no, then I'll be in trouble, or things won't go well for me. So also having the reassurance of hey, if you don't want to do this, that's totally fine. I will be okay. We will be okay. We'll figure out something else, right? So having their no be completely okay and reassuring them with that as well. Last bullet point, what is your responsibility here? I think that we could debate that forever, but I think just from my point of view, you can do all of these things and they are still an adult human at the end of the day. And it is their responsibility to take care of their well-being. You are doing everything that you can. I look at it from a perspective of personal integrity. So personal integrity for me is, am I doing everything that I know to do to create a safe environment? And if I'm doing everything that I know to do to create a safe environment, I have to trust that the other adults that I am dealing with will act accordingly. And if they don't, I can't be responsible for that, because I'm doing everything that I know how to do. Can I learn better? Can I do better next time? Sure. But my current personal integrity, I am doing everything that I know to do.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have a huge amount to add to that. I think I was just also picking up on the part where Brianna was talking about attachment maybe clouding the ability to introspect, and how if you just really, really want it to work, that can kind of take precedence over everything else. It's I can put up with whatever, I just want this to work. And I have definitely been there. And my experience is that the only way I managed to get out of that was by taking everything that was going on inside of me and putting it outside of me somehow. So whether that is talking to friends and being really honest about what is actually going on, try to avoid feeling perhaps any shame about being honest about the dynamics that you're uncomfortable with, and really be honest with them and share it with them, and people who are safe and who you trust to take you at your word and to give you good advice. Or it can be, if it's accessible to you, to work with a professional. I went to a therapist at first for the first time because I was in a relationship where I was I'm so unhappy all the time, but I really wanted to work somehow for some reason, and I don't know what to do. And so that was what prompted me to go to therapy. So thanks to that person for putting me on this path of personal work, but also working with other people in this way now. So yeah, if attachment is getting in the way of you thinking clearly about things, get out of your head and speak to other people, is what I'd say.
Thank you for that question, Brianna.
We have got another question in the chat. It's been sent to me privately, so you can't see it. And it's the reason why is because this person wants to be anonymous in order to respect the privacy of their partner. So the question is, how do you, or have you, handled different needs, and also distinguished whether your partner just needs something different or whether they are simply someone that needs more hierarchical structure? I can tell you how I'm understanding that question, because they've asked me. I'm not sure if that makes sense, and I haven't asked a follow-up question, but I can tell you how I'm understanding that question, if that's okay. I am hearing that someone might want something from you in a relationship or express some sort of dissatisfaction in the relationship. And the question is that just that they need something and that can work within relationship anarchy? Or are they in fact asking for hierarchy, for that kind of automatic prioritization? Does that make sense?
Yes.
They've said yes. So that's feels like I've understood. So I mean, maybe I can like take this one to start with, and then you might have other stuff to add.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about the partner I spoke about earlier, who I don't see in person very often. And the reason for that is that we live very far apart. We live in the same city, but it's a big city, so we live very far apart and just have, busy schedules and various neurodivergences that make traveling long distances difficult, and whatever. It's not for lack of liking each other or wanting to spend time together, but that doesn't work for us at this point in time. And he spends a lot of time in person with other people in his life, and there have been moments where I felt a bit of envy about that, like, oh, you're going to see that person again, well, it's nice for them that they get to see you again. I've had these petty thoughts before. And if I, in that moment, didn't really analyze and interrogate what I was feeling, I might, if I was a bit less introspective about it, I might say to him, I want to be given the same amount of time as that person or those people, or I want to be given more time than those people. And that would be, me asking for a hierarchy. But really, that's not what I want. When I interrogate what I actually want in this, like, why is that bringing up envy for me? It's because I really value being connected to this person. I really want to have nice life experiences with them. They were doing interesting things that I would like to do with them at some point, like going to a pub quiz or whatever. And ultimately, it's because I want to be part of their day-to-day. And when I thought about it like that, I was like, well, I am part of their day-to-day. We're very connected. I know everything that's going on in their life, So it's the envy spikes up, and it might seem like a desire for hierarchy. But when you actually look at the need underneath it, you either identify that you already have that thing, or it gives you an action to take. So imagine I had thought about it and then realized, well, actually, I'm feeling envious because I'm feeling disconnected. That's something I can bring to my partner and say, like, how can we cultivate connection in ways that actually work for us right now? Because I know I can't be treated like that person for various practical reasons. What's going to be workable for us? I hope that's helpful as a starting point, because you were asking how we have handled it. And obviously we don't know your specific situation, but I hope it helps.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And literally, you used the word workable, and I wrote down what's workable. And I also wrote down, what are you responsible for? And are you trying to solve something for your partner? Because there is a difference between solving something for your partner and making the relationship workable. And so, we can only do our own work in the relationship, right? And like, my question to you would be like, what is not workable for you here? Like, what do you see the problem is for you specifically? And I think Rose's inquiry was really poignant to that point.
Thank you. We have one more question. Shall we try and answer one more?
Let's try and answer that. Yeah, because we're running over a little bit, but yeah, these are great questions.
Why don't you read it out? I feel
Okay.
like a bit of reading out fatigue.
Okay. I know that in theory, I was thinking about this while we were talking about the comparison thing. So thank you so much for asking this question, actually. I know that in theory, I shouldn't compare my relationships, but I find that difficult in practice, especially when one feels much more intense and close-knit than another. I'm trying to appreciate each person and relationship for its uniqueness, but when I feel a stronger pull to invest in one over the other, I can't help but start questioning the other relationship. Even though I may not actually have the capacity to invest equally in both relationships, and each partner appears to be satisfied in the existing relationship structure / investment. Yeah, I mean, my thought, understanding behind what you're sharing is the difference between comparison when things are different and comparison when things are inequitable, right? Or unworkable. Because every relationship is going to be different. Like you're going to feel differently about every person. And I think one of the growing pains of this learning this style of relating is allowing it to be okay that it is different and that you do feel differently. And that's okay. Like, in my view, things are always going to be unequal, quote unquote. Because, and I don't think that equality is necessarily the goal, right? Like the goal is more equitability, but I think even more so than that, the goal is workability. Like, what is actually workable here and allowing it to be okay. Like, that's kind of the beauty of it. Like, that's the freedom on the other side of that is like, yeah, like I do have really big, strong feelings towards this person, and I have these other type of feelings to this other person. And that's okay. Like that's kind of the whole point of relationship anarchy is that we recognize and we allow for and we make space for and make okay that we have different feelings for different people. We have different wants and needs towards different people and that that's okay, right?
I'd
Yeah.
like to read out a comment because it's nice to hear from other people too. So Julia writes, I feel there's much more nuance to comparison because I feel like it's not a clever move to compare partners and use it against them in any way. But I feel like comparison, even done just by yourself, and of course with a level of self-reflection, can lead you to needs or wishes that are important to you in every close relationship and can open up the conversation with a partner about them, like maybe closeness. And exactly, Julia, this is exactly. I wish I could click my fingers, I cannot. But I really agree with that. I was writing down things like comparison can help you recognize what your non-negotiables are. Oh, I'm feeling a draw to compare these two relationships because actually that's me identifying that in one relationship, I'm getting something that feels really important. And I notice that it's missing in this other relationship. And maybe I actually need that in all of my relationships. So comparison can help you figure out what's important to you, exactly as you said. And it can be with a degree of self-reflection, exactly as you said, also a way to gather information. And it's almost inevitable that you're going to notice differences between your connections. Noticing differences does not mean that you're necessarily devaluing the human being that you're in connection with. You're just noticing and learning, gathering information that might be useful to help you build better relationships.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. That's also how we learn. We're experiencing, different people. And I think where it goes into the what doesn't work, what's not workable, is when you're comparing people and then you're like, well, this person treats me this way, so therefore this person should treat me this way, right? Like that would be unworkable, like where you're using that comparison to try to change another person or another relationship, where instead we're saying, notice that and be like, oh my God, it's so great that I get this out of this relationship, whether it be the feeling or the treatment or the behavior or whatever it is. And then just being like, oh yeah, like that's really lovely. I really, really love that. And yeah, like I don't get that over here. But does that make this other relationship unworkable or does it just make it different?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you all so much for coming to the talk and the Q&A.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, again, for being here.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you want to get in touch with us, go to the podcast description. You can share your feedback, suggest themes for future series, and find ways to work with us.
If you liked this, leave us a 5-star review with a comment. It really helps our sweet little baby of a podcast grow.
And if you didn't like it, maybe don't leave a review. Just go complain to a friend.
Thanks so much for listening.
All the love.